gotta start today, where we left off yesterday. Israel versus Qatar is quickly becoming Israel versus the entire Middle East. And that may be exactly what Benjamin Netanyahu wants. We're gonna break down the latest developments right now. This is the Global Lane. But before we get into it, a quick word from today's video sponsor. Let's jump right in with a dramatic intro showing maps of Israel, Qatar, and the Middle East as sirens blare. A voice booms. The Middle East is once again at the center of global attention. In 2025, Israel launched airstrikes on Doha, targeting Hamas leaders. Qatar strongly condemned the move, calling it a violation of its sovereignty. But this conflict is more than just two countries. It's reshaping regional alliances and global geopolitics. How did things get so heated? What does Qatar bring to the table? And how will global players navigate these shifting sands? Stay tuned to find out. Israel-Qatar Conflict 2025 Explained. For over a year, the Israel-Palestine conflict has dominated headlines with the Gaza Strip, frequently bearing the brunt of Israeli military action. However, in October 2024, the narrative shifted dramatically when Hamas fighters crossed into Israeli territory, marking a significant escalation in the long-running conflict. In response, Israel launched a large-scale military operation code named Shield of the Nation, with thousands of airstrikes and ground incursions into Gaza. While Israel has inflicted heavy casualties on Hamas, the group continues to demonstrate resilience. The ongoing operation has resulted in numerous civilian deaths and injuries, and a severe humanitarian crisis in Gaza. As the situation intensifies, global calls for a ceasefire grow louder, with Hamas vowing to continue the fight until victory, and Israel determined to eliminate the threat posed by the militant group. The outcome of the conflict remains uncertain, with far-reaching implications for regional stability and beyond. As we reported yesterday, Israel's war against Hamas has spread outside of Gaza and Palestinian territory for the first time since October. The IDF has entered Lebanon and launched strikes into Syria in pursuit of Hamas operatives. But their most controversial move yet was launching missiles into Doha, the capital of Qatar. Now, why Qatar? Why would Israel risk provoking an entire nation and possibly sparking a broader regional conflict? Well, it's because they believe that Qatar has harbored Hamas leaders for years, providing them safe haven and resources to plan attacks against Israel. Israel considers Hamas a terrorist organization and a direct threat to its security, and they believe that Qatar's support for Hamas has only intensified since October. Now, this is something that we reported on back in November 2023, that Israel and the United States had gathered intelligence that Qatar was indeed harboring top Hamas leadership, including senior members of the group's political bureau who planned the October attack from Qatari soil. So the timing makes sense. After the October attack, Israel warned Qatar to crack down on Hamas activity within its borders, suspend all links to the militant group, and hand over any Hamas operatives in their custody. But Israel believes that Qatar didn't do enough. If anything, they've continued to allow Hamas leaders to operate freely and have even provided them with some level of protection. This has only fueled tensions between the two nations and culminated in Israel's recent airstrikes on Doha. Now, you might be wondering why Qatar? Why is a small Gulf nation like Qatar such a big deal? Well, it's because of three main reasons. First, Qatar is home to one of the largest U.S. military bases in the region, Al Udeid Air Base. It is crucial for American operations in the Middle East and houses a significant number of troops and equipment. The presence of the U.S. military in Qatar has been a stabilizing force in the region for years, but it could soon become a major point of contention in the conflict with Qatar, caught in the crossfire between Israel and Iran. Second, Qatar is a critical player in the global liquefied natural gas market, exporting around 100 million metric tons per year. Any disruption to Qatar's LNG exports could have a devastating impact on global energy supplies and drive up prices worldwide. This could pose a significant challenge for European countries already struggling with high energy costs and could exacerbate the economic crisis in some nations. Third, Qatar has often played a key role in mediating conflicts in the region, most notably during the 2021-2022 blockade, when it helped broker a deal between Saudi Arabia and the UAE and the rebel Houthi group in Yemen. That means that by striking Qatar, Israel risks damaging relationships with not just the Saudis and the Emirates, but also potentially the United States and other Gulf states. Essentially, Qatar is a critical player in the region and has significant influence over energy supplies, diplomatic relations, and military activities in the Middle East. This makes it an important target for both sides in the conflict and raises the stakes for the entire region. In response to the airstrikes, Qatar condemned the move in the strongest terms, calling it a dangerous escalation and a violation of its sovereignty. They demanded that Israel apologize for the attack and compensate for the damage caused by the airstrikes. However, Israel has rejected these demands, insisting that they have intelligence to back up their claims that Qatar has been harboring Hamas leaders and funding the group's activities. They argue that they had no choice but to take action to protect their citizens from further attacks. In addition, Israel has accused the U.S. of not doing enough to rein in Qatar and hold them accountable for their actions. This has strained relations between the two allies and raised questions about the future of cooperation in the region. The international community has largely condemned the airstrikes, with the UN calling for restraint and urging all parties to avoid further hostilities. However, it remains to be seen whether these calls will be heeded and how the situation will develop in the coming days. Meanwhile, Iran has pledged full support for Qatar and condemned the airstrikes. They have also vowed to defend Qatar if necessary, raising concerns that the conflict could drag Iran into the fray. This would undoubtedly escalate the situation and potentially lead to a wider regional conflict involving several powerful nations. As tensions rise, Turkey has called for urgent talks to resolve the crisis and has offered to mediate between Israel and Qatar. However, it remains unclear whether these efforts will be successful and prevent further hostilities. Overall, the situation between Israel and Qatar is rapidly deteriorating, and there are growing concerns that it could spiral out of control. As the conflict drags on, the stakes continue to rise and the potential for a wider regional war becomes more apparent. On Tuesday, the Arab League convened an emergency meeting in Cairo to discuss the airstrikes and coordinate a unified response. The meeting was attended by foreign ministers from all 22 member states and was called at the request of Qatar, which urged the League to take a strong stance against Israel and demand an immediate end to the airstrikes. During the meeting, the ministers expressed deep concern over the airstrikes and their potential to destabilize the region. They called for respect for Qatar's sovereignty and territorial integrity and demanded that Israel apologize for the attack and compensate for the damage caused. The ministers also discussed possible responses to the airstrikes and agreed to form a committee to follow up on the implementation of any decisions made. With Qatar being a pivotal player in the global liquefied natural gas market, The airstrikes have raised concerns about potential disruptions to energy supplies. Many fear that escalating tensions could lead to a complete shutdown of Qatar's LNG exports, which could have devastating consequences for global energy markets. The prospect of losing access to such a significant source of natural gas has sent shockwaves through the industry, and policymakers worldwide are scrambling to assess the potential impact on energy security. Russia has taken notice of the escalating conflict between Israel and Qatar and is actively exploring ways to capitalize on the situation to its advantage. Moscow has reached out to both nations, separately expressing its willingness to facilitate dialogue and mediate a peaceful resolution to the crisis. However, many believe that Russia's true intentions lie in exploiting the chaos and advancing its own strategic interests in the region. By positioning itself as a potential mediator, Russia can enhance its reputation as a key player in international affairs and potentially gain influence over both Israel and Qatar. Europe, heavily reliant on liquefied natural gas from Qatar, is closely monitoring the situation and preparing contingency plans to secure alternative energy sources if supplies from Qatar were to be disrupted. The region's energy security is already fragile, following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and any disruption to Qatari exports could exacerbate the energy crisis in Europe. European officials are urgently seeking alternative suppliers and exploring ways to increase energy efficiency to mitigate the impact of a potential supply shock. As the global community grapples with the implications of the conflict, the United States finds itself in a precarious position, caught between its long-standing ally Israel and its strategic partner Qatar. The U.S. is facing a diplomatic dilemma with profound implications for its interests in the region. The conflict poses a significant challenge to America, its standing in the Middle East, and its ability to maintain regional stability. What happens next? We see three potential outcomes here. 1. Diplomacy. Perhaps Qatar pushes for a UN Security Council resolution condemning Israel's actions. They could then negotiate a ceasefire agreement that ends the airstrikes and establishes a mechanism to investigate the incident and hold those responsible to account. 2. Escalation. Israel could face retaliation from Iran-backed groups, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon or Hamas in Gaza, leading to further military clashes and a wider regional conflict. 3. A worst-case scenario. The conflict could escalate into a full-blown regional confrontation involving multiple Gulf states, potentially triggering a devastating energy and security crisis on a global scale. At this point, it really seems like every actor in the Middle East is on edge, waiting to see what move comes next. The entire region could collapse into chaos and war very quickly. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video and learned something new. Please remember to like and share if you found it valuable. Your support helps us continue delivering quality content. Thanks again and see you in the next one.